Welcome back to the last daily rundown of the week. Thank you for watching Channel 7. I'm Paul Burgess, believe it or not. And with me are guests Jackie Wright and Loz Kay. We've had a good old chat about the NHS, haven't we?
We have.
And now we're going to talk about the BBC iPlayer.
Are we?
Yeah, apparently. All BBC iPlayer users must now order a TV licence, regardless of whether or not they watch programmes live. The new rules, which will close the so-called iPlayer loophole, came into effect this morning. Previously, only viewers who were watching shows as they were being broadcast required a licence. That meant it was legal to watch content after broadcast via the catch-up service, without paying the annual £145.50 fee. The changes to the rules are expected to particularly affect younger people who are more likely to consume content on smartphones or tablets than via traditional television sets. It is a lot of money, isn't it?
Yeah, I think they should scrap it. TV licence.
It's the only channel that doesn't have commercials, which is why we pay the licence
I know why
fee,
we pay it.
Isn't it?
Yeah, but I still think we should scrap it. That amount of money.
It is a lot of money.
And that BBC iPlayer, yeah, you're going to be watching it on your computer probably, or your laptop, something like that. But I just think scrap it. What are they using it for?
Well, I think there's still a fairly good case for sort of the BBC licence fee in terms of actually supporting what they do, in terms of the kind of the quality and breadth of what they do. I mean, it's a kind of, which is, you can kind of just see something like the Olympics coverage or the BBC proms at the moment. Yeah. I'm worried about this though. I think chiefly because I don't think it's been explained exactly what the intentions are at the moment, and I think it's going to be very confusing for consumers, because if you look on their website, it says now you've got to use it for the iPlayer, but it's essentially you're responsible for having a license for any device or service you own. Now, we're really used to thinking about it as a TV license, so it relates to a particular object that isn't movable inside one household, and the license is essentially for the household. But it's a very different kettle of fish using it on your smartphone or on tablets or devices you take around you. So the question is like, well, what happens if you download a whole bunch of programs on a public Wi-Fi service? Who's responsible then? Well, from what it says on the site, you're responsible. But I think that's going to be very difficult to enforce, and I think it's also going to create a great deal of confusion, which I think may well be the problem here.
Well, why have they started it? Why have they said it? Why have they started this?
Because people who don't have TV licences
are watching it
can pretty much watch any BBC content that they want after the fact through BBC iPlayer. So it's like,
they wanted to make sure that everybody pays.
Yeah, it was essentially that. I mean, I think it's like John Whittingdale, who was the head of DCMS, the culture secretary at the time, just kind of a year ago, was talking about saying essentially there's a loophole that kind of, and I think the concern was that increasingly people were going to be consuming content online. And as you said in your introduction, Paul, is that particularly young people were kind of doing that. I mean, certainly I don't own a television anymore, which seems a bit weird for somebody who seems to be out on the telly all the time. But it's like I just use online devices, so telly and also just smartphone instead of a telly and tablets. The other thing that kind of came up with this story, in sort of mid-August, was about enforcement. There was a rumour that there was going to be some kind of way of a BBC sniffer van, or a Wi-Fi van, actually being able to get to analyse what you were downloading and your content. We were all all of us who kind of deal with sort of tech politics stuff, were quite a bit sceptical about that, because that's a GCHQ level kind of task. It's not
lost me already.
It's not. It's like, well, basically, it's to say, well, how are they going to tell? Because other than looking through your window.
Yeah, but that's what they say about TV license. I don't know if they still do have vans going around, TV license vans
Apparently they do.
Do they still have those?
Yeah, apparently
right.
they do, yeah.
Well, it's like, well, it was, that was always about, the big thing about the van was it was the fear of the van was the important thing. It wasn't really.
So they were never going to knock on your door and say,
it was really.
But it could tell if you had a TV on in the house. I mean, I know people who have consoles, for example, a PlayStation 4, connected to their TV, but don't have any TV.
Right.
And have had to go through this whole process of proving that they don't have access to any kind of channels.
Right.
You know, just so that they don't have to pay a TV license. But how are they going to police this? Like,
this was the thing. It's because obviously it was saying, are you going to try and analyse how people's internet traffic and internet use? Really, that's such a massive task. I think it's very unlikely. The most likely thing I think it will end up with, and certainly people I kind of know who have also done some of the technology stuff for BBC, say probably what's most likely is that you'll have to have a PIN number to put in to use iPlayer. I think that's probably where they will go, and that's already been suggested, which could have some advantages. You might be able to use it abroad, which you can't in the same way at the moment, but also it could mean that people will just can't be bothered with it, and I think there's a danger for the BBC that there's going to be a backlash, because I think for a lot of young people they're used to just accessing iPlayer. But then you feel like you've had something taken away. And then I think a lot of people will start to feel like you and say, well, wait a minute, you've taken this from me when I had it. So that's not going to necessarily make people feel very good about the BBC.
Should we move on to another story? Come already. Lone parents across the UK have seen the biggest rise in employment of any group of people, official figures show. For the first time ever, 2/3 of single parents were in work between April and June 2016, the Office for National Statistics has said. The figures also show that the number of households where no one works has fallen to 3.1 million, the lowest number recorded in the last 20 years. The government said welfare reforms had given people an incentive to work. However, single parent groups said many working individuals were still in poverty and still struggling to support their families. I take umbrage as well with the figures of that they give for people out of work, because there are certain people who are not working who are not counted in that figure.
People in prison.
If you're long-term unemployed,
right.
For example, if you have an illness that prevents you from,
they're not counted, right?
No, but they're still part of the figures. And if you're on a government scheme,
right,
where you're doing maybe an apprenticeship where they actually pay you. They can pay you a pittance if they want to.
Well, it's under what's called the living wage.
And allowed to get away
now,
with
you're still unemployed because you're not employed, you're simply doing an apprenticeship, and there are hundreds of thousands of people doing them. So
it's not a true figure?
I'm always cautious when I read figures about unemployment dropping because of what I see in my life, with my Facebook friends, on Twitter, in the newspapers. So it doesn't wash with me, because I still see a lot of people struggling to find work.
But I think a lot of people are struggling in work to live. Like that says, people are still in poverty, and it's usually working people who are going to food banks.
Yeah.
You know, they are still struggling, even working, especially single parents, I think.
Well, it's in work poverty that is one of the big issues, isn't it? Because you kind of say, where is this feeding into really changing what is the kind of the situation for most people's lives? And last year, was between 2014 and 2015, there were still 3.9 million children living in poverty in this country.
That's ridiculous.
It's just such a vast. I mean, it's just,
huge,
and also particularly, in Manchester, there are boroughs or there's wards in Manchester where there's about half the children are living in poverty.
Talked about that, and now we're talking a couple of weeks ago.
And are these from? Well, you don't know. Are these from in families whose parents are working?
It's both in and out of work.
Right.
But it's like when you say that this is kind of extraordinary when we're supposed to be sort of talking about we've got some northern powerhouse. We say, but how is this feeding? How is this actually feeding through? And I suppose I feel that the government is right to a certain extent to say that there have been strides forward in terms of employment. I think that is right to say in terms of what they're counting in terms of the employment that's happening, but you're saying, but what's the effect? How is it helping us? Particularly if we're still in a situation where we've got in-work poverty.
I know, it's frightening.
I often wonder how many people there are out there like me, and I don't mind talking about my personal circumstances in that I'm officially unemployed. But I can't claim any benefit of any kind because I'm married legally to a guy who works more than 24 hours a week, regardless of how much he's paid per hour.
Really?
Yes. So I can't claim anything. I am therefore not registered as unemployed, but I'm unemployed. Because I don't go and sign on every fortnight. I have nothing to do. All I'm doing is seeking
so you're not part of that
paid work. No, but I'm officially unemployed.
Yeah.
And also I think it's about self-employed, and that I think also those figures kind of hide a great deal of actually kind of shifting unemployment as well. Yeah. But I think also in terms of
Sorry. We've got to dive to a break. Somebody's screaming in my ear. Get out!
Shopping. Go and buy things.
It's time for another break on the Daily Rundown. But coming up we'll be back with you in 3 minutes here on Channel 7. Stay with us.